All right, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Holly Ackerman. I am one of the early childhood education consultants for KET, and I am grateful that you are here joining us for this session. We're going to be talking about media literacy in early childhood. So I will tell you that I really have enjoyed your comments so far in the comment box about why it's important to find reliable information. And you all are correct. We want to make sure that the information that we are finding is true and accurate. We want to make sure, I loved, I believe it was Cindy who talked about that obviously Abe Lincoln did not say that with a quote, and you're exactly right, but that's one of the reasons that I chose that. I thought that was, I actually saw this meme floating around the internet, kind of in the heat of the pandemic. And so we had lots of information coming from all sides, right? And so it's really important for not only for us as adults to use our critical thinking skills to be able to decipher and see what is that true or is that not, but it's also very, very important. We have, they're starting to call them media natives or technology natives, right? So we've got kids that have grown up with technology. I think about even my own children. My own kids, for the most part, grew up with technology walking around in my hand, right? So again, it's very, very important that we start very early teaching children how to find appropriate resources and how to know if that information is accurate, and to be using those critical thinking skills to kind of question that and making sure that we're right. So we're going to get, like I said, we're going to be talking a little bit about media literacy. So the first thing that I really wanted to talk about, or the kind of the preemptive into putting this training together, was this report. So this report came out of the Erickson Institute, which is in Chicago. They have a technology and early childhood center. It's often called the Tech Center. So if you've ever heard of the Erickson Institute Tech Center, that is where this came from. And this was, this media literacy report actually takes a look at developmentally appropriate ways or understanding the logic and things behind media literacy in early childhood. There's lots of stuff. If you go looking for information on media literacy for K through 12 and above, there's a lot of resources out there. There's not as much out there when it comes to information or activities or lessons that you can use with early childhood. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this media literacy report found, but then we're going to go into later on, we're going to go into talking about some sample activities that you can do as an early childhood educator to help support media literacy development in early childhood. So one thing I didn't mention, I forgot, I've got a couple of coworkers that are kind of hiding in the background. They're going to be watching the chat for me. They're also going to be helping me and putting some links along the way into the chat box. So if you have a question and I happen to miss it, I do have two screens, but still sometimes I may miss a question or something important that needs to be added to the conversation. So there will be somebody, I just want to let you know there is somebody that's watching that. The other piece is, like I mentioned earlier, this is really informal. I am happy for you to unmute, join in the conversation if you've got something to add, or maybe you know of a resource that even I haven't found, which is probably possible because it's not like I'm the expert either. So we're learning this together. So kind of what is, when we're talking about the ecosystem of media literacy in early childhood, think about this. As I mentioned, are digital natives. That's the term I meant to call them. I couldn't remember. I knew that there was a term, but it was escaping me. Digital natives. They call these kids digital natives. And when you think about that, what that means is that they are surrounded by media all the time. As you can see on this graphic, everywhere that you typically can find children, you're going to find some sort of media and technology. So whether we're talking at home, usually there's a television. Most of us walk around with a little mini computer in our pocket. Libraries have access to that. Museums, faith-based organizations, or even our after-school programs. So when we're thinking about early childhood, we're talking birth all the way up through about age 8. So they are being exposed and learning how to use media or technology in all sorts of resources, um, in all sorts of spaces that you can find them. So these were some questions when Erickson decided that they needed to work on finding, because a defining or a definition for media literacy in early childhood didn't exist. And so they started asking themselves some questions. And these are kind of some questions, guiding principles or guiding questions that they used in order to develop this report. So for example, number 3, how do we strengthen the technology fluency and media literacy of parents, of educators, or other adults in young children's lives? Well, one way we can do that is to attend a training just like this. The other way that we can do that is becoming media mentors and helping other educators, helping parents, help them understand exactly the appropriate uses of media and technology, and then as well as how to foster those media literacy skills. Because again, that's hugely important. So what they started from was this particular definition. So the National Association for Media Literacy and Education determined, and they went through a whole process, but they determined that this was the definition of media literacy. And it's the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication. So they really tried to be inclusive in thinking about what critical thinking skills are needed, what critical thinking skills do children have, and what are they going to do in order to be media literate. The thing that I really like about this, and you'll notice in that first bullet point, is the fact that what they're taking, or what they've done is that they really use traditional forms of literacy as a stepping stone, as a part, because again, it's not just about reading. It's when we teach children learning to read and then reading to understand, we're wanting them to do all of those things, right? When we teach them how to look for sources, I know back in my day, thinking about an encyclopedia, I had to make sure that when I was finding a source, that it was a credible source, that I read through that material, that I analyzed, that I evaluated, and then I created my report from that, or whatever I was creating at the time. So again, we're thinking about that literacy now encompasses media, that it's the expansion of that. And as I've talked about before, and that second bullet really drives home, but it's talking about being able to use those critical thinking skills, and that we have children that are media makers. So whether they are posting a video on YouTube, or they're putting up a post on Instagram, or they've created a TikTok, whatever the case may be, we've got media makers right around us. And again, we want them to be responsible when they're doing that. And so the best way to do that is to help teach them. This isn't something, like a lot of other skills, when we think about it, isn't something that children are born with. They don't know and understand exactly all of the things that encompass media literacy. So what did the early, I think I skipped one. No, I didn't. So anyway, the tech report. So what they did was, with this media literacy and tech report, is that they really wanted to update the definition in early childhood. So they wanted to really talk about what is developmentally appropriate when we're talking about media literacy for children under the age 8. And then the other piece of it is that they really wanted to hone in on an understanding that in order to accurately think about media and technology, we need a basis of child development. We need an understanding of what child development is through the lens of media. And so that was one thing that they did. And we'll talk about kind of where you can find all of this. One thing I did fail to mention too at the beginning is you will have a link here. I'll make sure that we'll get it to you tonight before we leave, but also on top of that, I will be sending up a follow-up email tomorrow once I process all the credit, and you're going to have a whole folder full of resources, including where you can find this tech report. So we'll talk about that later. I'll show you that later. The other idea that they wanted to do with this tech Media Literacy in Early Childhood report is the fact that they wanted to give guidelines for educators like you and I on how to support media literacy in early childhood. So these are just some of the partners. This work actually began in 2017. They pulled together a small work group in 2017. Then in 2019, pre-COVID, they pulled in together. This is just on the screen. You'll notice here, this is just a few of the partners. This is definitely not all of the partners that were there. As you can see, there's some listings of there were local libraries, or they made sure that various geographic areas were represented, but they brought all of these players to the table because these people are the ones that are experts in media literacy. They are experts in development of media content. So, or they are experts in child development, as you noticed with the American Academy of Pediatrics. So they brought together all of these knowledgeable partners to help them develop the definition for early childhood. So this is the way that they defined early childhood or media literacy in early childhood. So it's the emerging ability. That's one thing that you'll notice. That's the big difference that you'll see is the emerging ability to access, engage, explore, comprehend, critically inquire, evaluate, create with developmentally appropriate media. So again, you're going to notice that they wanted to stay in alignment with that namely definition, but they really wanted to make sure that it was very focused in on the differences between when we're thinking about children 3rd grade and above and thinking about children from birth to 8. There's lots of differences. We all know that. And so they really wanted to hone in on those differences. I mentioned to you before that they really wanted to make sure that there was this basic understanding of child development through the lens of media or through the lens of media use. So in that particular report, they've actually dedicated, it's pages 10 through 14, they dedicated to understanding child development for birth through age 8 through the lens of media use. So I really highly recommend that you take a look at that. I know even for me, it was very informative when it talks about, I know a little bit of child development. I've had some child development classwork, but thinking about it in a different way and thinking about it through the lens of media use was interesting for me. So anyway, so I highly recommend that you check that out. So part of the report, you'll notice here, these are the, when we're talking about implementation of media, is that they really wanted to focus in on, they wanted to break down that definition into those specific words. And so we're going to go over some of those here in just a second. So they gave you a definition of each one. So what is access? What is to critically evaluate? So they define each one of those. Then they also go in further and they talk about supporting skills. So what can you and I do, or what are some supporting skills that are going to help children to be able to access, be able to critically evaluate, those type of things. The next part that I really, really liked, which I'm going to focus in on a few of those for each one of them here in just a second, is the tips for adults. These are simple ways that you and I can help support children as they are doing each one of those. The last 2 parts are hugely important as well. It also gives activities. So these are simple and useful activities that you can use. So Cindy, you're asking why for this age 8 and under, and a big part of that is because there are, namely, for example, has lots of resources, and I'll show you that website here in just a minute, and you'll have access to that website. But namely, there's been lots of work done around media literacy for older children. So this specifically is just targeting that birth to age range. Birth to 8 age range. And that's again, because it really didn't exist. There wasn't a whole lot of support for early childhood educators, and understanding that we have children that are digital natives, that we wanted to be able to support them in appropriate ways. I hope that answers your question. If not, just let me know. But there's going to be in here in this report as well, there's activities that you can use to help children access and all of that. And then last but not least, this is hugely important, is cultural considerations. All cultures vary in how they view the use of media. all cultures vary in a lot of different ways. And so they want you to make sure that we are using media in ways that are developmentally appropriate, that are culturally sensitive, that are accurate, and that again, that it's access, equity, and inclusion, right? We want to make sure that all of the children that we serve, that they have representation. So we're going to talk about each one of those kind of keywords in the definition and what you can find. So how they defined access was to be able to effectively locate, use, and select media. So what are some simple ways that you as an adult can do that? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that we're curating high quality educational media for a variety of uses. So this is not just, and we wanting to find, I like the last part of this sentence here too, that it nurtures joint media engagement. That's where the difference can be found hugely. We know that we do have children that are on that, in this younger kind of age range that are using media and technology by themselves. However, the real purpose and the preemptive behind using media and technology with young children is to be doing that together, whether it's with educators or whether it's with their caregivers that are in their life. But we want to talk about ways that we can curate that. So there's actually, and it's linked here, but I can go ahead and show you. There's an article that you're going to be getting that's as part of, like I mentioned to you, there's going to be a whole folder. But this right here is actually talking, it's an article from the Erickson Institute that talks about how do you select and curate apps for young children? What are you looking for? Because the one thing that I can tell you, and I've looked myself, that I can clearly tell you is that you can go into whatever app store that you want to, and you can put in educational apps in your search bar. You're going to have hundreds and hundreds of apps show up. However, not all of those that are labeled for education, actually the vast majority of them that are labeled for education truly are not that educational. They're not any more than a flashcard. And we want to make sure that when children are using media, when young children are using media or apps or whatever, that again, we're invoking those critical thinking skills. We're asking them to think about or to be able to use those critical thinking skills while using that particular media. This one's also important, and this is what I would love to do in some form or fashion at some point in time, but is to help create a network of media mentors. So if you know others, and even if that's someone that is an educator in one of the older grades, if you know others that are maybe know more about apps, or you need to find something, whatever, create this network so that we all can learn from each other. That's what the most important piece is. Like, for example, I'm not, not saying that PBS is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I will tell you, working for a public media station like PBS, KET, is the fact that I know that when I choose an app for my children, or that when I show parents an app that's made from PBS Kids, I know what's gone into that. I know the research, I know the learning goals, I understand what the purpose is. So again, that it's not just a flashcard in a bright and shiny bubble, but again, that it's something that I know that they're going to be able to learn from. So I want you to find people that know those type of things. And so I highly encourage you to work together to find people like that. So then when we're talking about engaging and exploring, so that's to intentionally use media for purpose and enjoyment. So we always have two reasons that we're using technology. One, it's just because we want to and it's for fun. That may be something like, I know that I watch a random television show just because I need something mindless. I've had a hard day, or I'm doing a lot of homework, or whatever the case may be, and I just want something mindless to watch. So that's for pure enjoyment. The other piece may be for a purpose. Maybe I'm looking for something. So how can we support this in children? Well, definitely supporting their questioning. We want to make sure that they are asking questions while they're using media. It's the same as when we use books or stories, right? we want them to think critically about what they're doing and about what they're looking at. I like this one, that we're going to be aligning those materials to learning goals. So I want to show you just real quick. It's also in this folder. I want to show you real quick. There's going to be several things that you can use. For example, this is a worksheet it's not a worksheet. That's not really what I should say. It's actually a planning form. It's not a worksheet that you use as the educator to help you decide when you are looking at a game or a website or something that you're wanting to incorporate, talking about digital games. These are some questions that you can work through and make sure that what you're looking at does align up with those learning goals that you're talking about or that you're looking for. There's a couple of others that I want to show you on here too. So out of the last round of the Ready to Learn grant, there were a couple of different forms that are sheets that we used when we did some trainings with educators that really talked about intentional and appropriate use, both of traditional and digital resources. So this again is just some thinking prompts for you as the educator to work through. When you're looking at a book or an image or whatever, here's some questions. Are there going to be things that I need to teach beforehand that children are going to be able to understand? Is the reading level too hard or too easy, or how much support am I going to need to do? Is there information around the text so that if we have children that maybe aren't quite literate yet, that they can still, from context clues, just as we teach when we're talking about reading, how can they look and find what they need to find? Does it give them the prompts to be able to push through to the next button or the next frame or whatever the case may be? And then last but not least is this one. I really like this one too. This right here is a resource that regardless of what you're thinking about using, you're going to put that goal at the top of this list. Then you're going to list it all out. What concepts are presented? So this really does require you to do some homework. It's no different than any other thing that when you're talking about using it in your classroom. Are there distractions when they're on this? So is it a site where they're going to be getting a lot of pop-up ads? Is there a site that they could potentially be clicking on the wrong thing? Does it require a support from me or from maybe others in the classroom? Maybe you can pair other children together. And then maybe what sort of accommodations would I need to make for all of the children in my class? And how can I mediate that challenge? How can I take care of this and make sure that this is, again, equitable and accessible to all the children that I serve? So these are just lots of resources that you can use. Like I said, you're going to actually get a link to this entire folder. So the next one is, I like this too, talking about supporting families. So this is just, again, thinking about what are ways that you can kind of help adults, the other adults in the children's lives, think about using open-ended prompts. Or again, we're wanting children to be able to engage and to explore all of the stuff, right? I like this one too. I know I keep saying this. I say this a lot, right? I like this, but I do. But caregivers, again, have the opportunity to understand cognitive load. So thinking about what that means is how much mental stress or how much mental activity does that particular game or show or whatever require? Young children, if you pay any attention to the way media is produced for young children, it's very different than how media is produced for you and I, right? So if we let's think about, I don't know, a Marvel comic movie. So we think about Guardians of the Galaxy. There are lots of twists and turns. There's lots of funny camera angles that are done very quickly. The transitions are very fast. If you watch a show that's targeted for children, let's say Daniel Tiger, you'll notice they don't do that, right? That there is a very intentional, slow transition, or you might see the camera slowly pan to the next area. Because again, children can't keep up like that. Their cognitive skills are not quite there yet to be able to understand that just because it moved from here to here very quickly, we're still in the same room. Right? So we're working with parents to help them understand the appropriate use and what that looks like for young children. So comprehending. So thinking about media messages and practices that transfer that knowledge appropriately. So we're thinking, this is kind of goes along with it, but kind of goes along with what I was saying, but making sure that we're slowing the media down to make sure that we are meeting the children where they're at, that they understand the storyline, that they can figure out what's going on, or if there are special effects, that if they have questions, they can ask you, or they can ask whomever that the adult in their life is. So again, just helping them better understand what that content is and what it looks like. This one's very important too. Thinking about talking about the content the same way that you would do when you do joint reading. So we use, I know a lot of times when we're reading books with children, we may use dialogic reading strategies. So that's basically, we talk about like what the cover looks like. We ask questions as we're reading. We're asking them to make predictions. We're asking them to critically think about that storyline. We want them to do the same thing when they're using media. We want them to ask those same questions. We, as the adults, whether we are the educator or the caregivers, we need to make the pause. We maybe need to pause something and ask questions, or we maybe need to give a little bit of background and story at the beginning of it so that they understand, okay, well, we're only gonna show maybe a 2-minute clip. I'll give you an example here later, but we'll show a 2-minute clip of something, but I need to set that story up first so that they clearly understand this is where, when you see this, it's picked up from here. They know what's kind of that backstory, right? So we would do that when we do reading. So we also need to think about talking about the ways that media was created, what parts are realistic, what parts they think maybe are pretend or fake. Because again, that's hugely important. There's lots of stuff out there that's all over the media that maybe isn't quite true, or it's got a little bit of a half truth or that kind of thing. And I know if some of us adults, myself included, have a difficult time kind of discerning some of that, it's going to be a lot harder for the kids. And so we need to make sure that they're using that information to do that. So this is moving into critically acquire. Critically inquire. So basically, to question, we're going to analyze those media messages. So how do we do that? So one of it is to question this media. So there are some tips, actually. Here it is. I was trying to find the right one. Now this is typically you're going to see this. This is typically used, this particular version of it is typically used with older children. There is a version that exists out there. It's in a book. I just didn't have the time to, I forgot to copy it and put it in here, but I wanted to give you this one. This comes from NAMELY. So again, comes from that National Association for Media Literacy. So these are some sample questions. Now you can definitely use a lot of these questions in early childhood. But these are sample questions that we can help or we can use to help children work through understanding media messages. So we want to know, for example, when we're talking about authors and audiences, who made this? Why did they make this? What is this particular website telling me to do? The other thing, a lot of times that if you figure it out very quickly, you can figure out the purpose behind it, is who paid for this? Who paid for this message to be posted? Why did they pay for that? What are they trying to benefit from it? So these, again, are lots of critical thinking questions that you could help children work through, and you can work through together. You can show them a website and kind of work through this together if they aren't to the point that they could be able to do this on their own. So these are just some, again, it's going to be in that folder, but these are just some sample questions that you're going to be able to do that. So we can understand and be able to discern between what's an assumption, what's a belief, what's a norm, and are there stereotypes that are a part of this media? And why would they put that in there if there is? This one I thought is really important too, is to understand that we need to model that there may not be an answer that's reliable. And that's okay. We also have to understand that we need to provide a wide variety. So whether that be in print, be digital, whatever, we need to provide multitudes and multi-modes of information to our children. And again, we can use a lot of these same questioning, those same media questions. We can use that with print materials. Who is the author? Where did we find this? Why is it important? Who paid for this research study? Why did they pay for this research study? So we can ask all of those same types of questions, because we have to understand that it's okay not to find an answer, right? I'm not an expert, as I mentioned to you earlier. I just think that media literacy is hugely important. And it was something that, again, I thought about working for a public media station. That's, again, we need educators that are and become media mentors so that they can help others around them. But that doesn't mean that I have all the answers. It doesn't mean that when you become a media mentor, or if you become a media mentor, that you have all the answers. That we just need to make sure that children are using those critical inquiring, questioning skills that we're wanting them to do and wanting to explore to find all the possible answers. And however, there may not be one right answer. It just might happen that way, and that's okay. So then we're going to talk about evaluating. So to ask, is the media right for me? Or is it right for the task that I am doing? So one thing that we really want as educators to do is to help prioritize children and family to learn about what their privacy rights. We want them, again, to think about what they're sharing. It's, the conversations. I've got a daughter that's 19. I have another one that's 13. I have these conversations all the time when I talk about, you need to make sure that you're careful about what you post. Long before they ever got a hold of any social media, I was having these conversations because I had heard way too many stories about, for example, an athlete that I had heard about at a local college had gotten a scholarship. However, when the college got a hold of their social media and was looking at things that were posted on there, they rescinded the scholarship. So I've heard about childcare directors looking up potential people and then deciding either to not interview them or not hire them based on what their social media was. So again, I talked a lot about that. I also talk about privacy rights. So this is another resource that's going to be in this folder. This comes from, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but from Common Sense Education. Common Sense Media, they really, really want all of us, whether we are parents or caregivers or educators or whether we're advocates, to understand and know about and use our common sense to think about what to put online or what not to. So like, for example, here are some tips for families on how they can boost privacy when we're talking about media usage. So we really need to make sure that we're discussing personal versus private. What does that look like? Making sure that we're using really good passwords. I've had to get better at that in the last several years because I've had passwords stolen. And so I need to make sure I've had accounts that have been hacked. So I need to make sure that when I'm setting up whatever, that I'm using those privacy settings as much as I possibly can. Same thing goes whenever, like when my daughters first got, they didn't get iPads, they got Kindles. When I made sure that I set those up in a particular way so that they couldn't get access to some sites that I didn't want them on. So we as adults need to make sure that we understand how to do that. And if we don't, we need to make sure that we're asking questions of the other adults around us of how to do that. And last but not least, I like that last one down there, skip those quizzes. I couldn't tell you how many people I've heard of that have gotten a hold of like one of those quizzes on Facebook. And then before you know it, like it's just, all of their stuff has been stolen because they've answered these questions with these personal information or that private information, things like, mother's maiden name and all of those kind of stuff that really doesn't need to be shared on social media. So anyway, so that's, again, we're wanting to make sure that these children understand these things very early on. And this just kind of goes again back into some of the things we've talked about, but just support that evaluation of everything, whether that be a book or TV or screen-based or apps or anything like that. That even apps like or ads intended for children. So like you and I'm sure, and some networks as well, still have lots and lots of commercials that are targeted to kids. When you think about it, it's either targeting usually some sort of food or it's targeting the newest, greatest toy, right? And so what happens when children see that? Oh, I want whatever the case may be, right? So that's, again, something to think about. When we have a site or we have a network that we're putting our children or allowing our children to watch, then what's coming in between those sessions or what's coming in between those shows? Is it an ad for something that 5 minutes later they're going to ask me to buy? Or is it an educational content? Here in public media world, we call those interstitials. And so a lot of times it's either something that's highlighting another episode or something like that that's coming out. Or if you think about the way most children's programming is done, is that there's an 11-minute episode, so an 11-minute basically story. Then there is some sort of interstitial in the middle, and then there's another 11-minute story that's at the end of that. So there's typically, in a 30-minute like PBS Kids show, there's two 11-minute stories and then an interstitial in between. There's no commercials. So again, we need to think about that when we're allowing children to access, just to make sure that they are doing or being able to do that. So then the last but not least is talking about creating. So when we're talking about creating, even young children can understand and successfully use things like green screen, or there's other apps that they can create. For example, the PBS Kids Scratch Junior app. That's a coding app. So again, there's lots of resources that are out there. There's lots of resources that are out there that have information, or that children can be media creators, even at a young age. So we need to talk to them about what production choices they are making. Why did they do that way? Why we know that no matter what the media is, that when their creator creates it, there's lots of decisions that go into why they included something or why they excluded something. So we need to also think about that it's a process. It's not necessarily always about the final product. It's about a process, which again involves inquiry and critical thinking. So that's what we really want children to be able to do. So it's not always about the end result. It's about the process that it took them to get there. And last but not least is to encourage children to be respectful of others. So if they are out somewhere and taking photos of something, or they're taking photos with friends or whatever the case may be, but making sure that they ask for permission. Even, even in my line of work, when we do an activity or we're doing an event with children, there's always a permission that has to be given. You all as educators that work in the school system, there's permissions that have to be given or opt out versus it's a little different than in my world, but it's an opt out. So it's, again, whether parents have to decide and caregivers have to decide whether they want that information out there. We need to be teaching children that it's okay to ask for that permission. If it's okay if they take a picture of something or someone, is what I want to get to. I see Kathy has put a great resource. Thanks, Kathy. Put a resource into the chat box. I'll make sure to get that added as well. But she's got it. It looks like it's from Common Sense. So I'm going to give you access to, I'm going to show you where you can find the Common Sense media too. So this is one big overarching question that they were all asking themselves when it come to thinking about this media literacy report. And they were asking, is the goal to help children become media literate, or is the goal to help children become literate in a digital and media rich world? And so the answer to that, or the answer that they really came up with, is talking about that it's really to become literate in a digital and media rich world, understanding that literate means so much more than reading or writing printed words. That when we're thinking about, because if you think about it, media and technology has given access and abilities to children that maybe a lot of times don't have that. For example, there's a child that I follow on Facebook. He has autism, and so he uses a tech tool. He has an iPad that has a lot of the push buttons and the words and things like that. So again, he can communicate. Technology has been fantastic when it comes to being able to give children that sometimes or did not in the past have a voice, now have a voice. And so we, again, all children access equitable and fairness. We need to make sure that all children are using media and technology in appropriate ways. So I said a lot of stuff. Before I go on to these activities, are there any questions? Right, so what I'm going to do now is I actually have several sample questions sample activities that you can do just to, again, help support media literacy development in young children. So one of the first things that I wanted to highlight is this. This is a resource that's in PBS Learning Media. It's a KET produced material, but I'm only going to show you a small snippet of it. And this really, for me, like the entire video, you could use it with younger children. However, I felt that when we actually used this particular resource with a group of, we were second graders, I believe, first or second graders, this past summer during Fayette County Summer Ignite. We went to one of the local elementary schools and we were sharing about misinformation and disinformation. And so this particular snippet, this particular clip, we really highlighted to talk about the difference between misinformation and disinformation.
Terms misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is inaccurate information that's been shared by mistake. The person sharing it wasn't trying to mislead people. Disinformation is untrue information that a person shares on purpose to mislead their audience. To spot mis and disinformation, it helps to ask these questions. 1. Who created this message? 2. Why was the message made? What's its purpose? Who's its audience? The purpose can be to persuade, inform, or engage, or entertain. Audience is who the message is targeting. 3. Who is paying for the message? What else have they paid for? Do they have other agendas? 4. What techniques are being used to get people's attention? 5. Who's represented in the message? What points of view are being left out? With these questions in mind, here are 4 ways to help determine if information is reliable. Let's take a look. The first is easy. Using trusted sources can mean getting the help of your librarian or teacher. Or it can mean using a fact-checking website to see if information is true or not. Second is click restraint. After you search for information, realize that the top search result isn't always the best one. Sometimes the top result might be an ad that's only trying to sell you something. So before clicking, look at the site's URL, the title, and the snippet of information about the site. This can save you time and ensure you are getting accurate information.
So like I said, that was just a small snippet of the video. I will make sure it's in that folder. There's a whole listing. I'll show you here in just a minute, but there's a whole listing of websites and resources for you in that folder. So I just pulled out this particular small snippet for use with young children. Now you noticed a lot of the same questions that this particular resource is encouraging children to ask or encouraging children to think about are a lot of the same questions that we've talked about through Namely or some of the other information.
Misinformation.
There we go. Sorry. So here's another activity. So we can, when we're thinking about using or looking at websites, one thing we want to encourage children is to look for unusual URLs or site names. So you can look here at the 2 different URLs. You're going to notice some differences. So if we're thinking about these 2 particular links, Which one of these do you think is the right link? The one on the top or the one on the bottom? Somebody can just let me know if you want to. It's probably going to be, I know that if we're looking here, so at the top one here, everything is spelled correctly, right? The bottom one, we've got tube that has 2 U's. Well, we should know that that's probably not right. So again, right, thanks, Carolyn, is that it's going to be the top one is going to be the most accurate one. So the next, oops, I'm sorry, go back one. The next thing is to look for signs of low quality. So is this a really well put together website? Or is there something kind of amiss? Are there things that are all in capital letters or bold that shouldn't be there? Or are there things that are posted with absolutely no sources? So this particular graphic here, this comes from a website that is talking about an aluminum foil beanie, okay? Aluminum foil deflector beanie. So the little part that's highlighted, it's really kind of hard to read, but it talks about, is this cheap and unintrusive form of mind control, production, or protection offers real security to the masses. So we want children to think about, okay, first of all, can anybody control anybody else's mind? Well, the answer to that's no. So we should know that this is probably not going to be something I need to invest my money in just because it happens to be there. The next thing that we need to think about is checking our emotions. I don't know about you, but I have gotten several text messages of random things of like, you know, hey, don't forget to accept this or go to this website so you can accept your accept your $500 gift or whatever that happens to be, where I get, of course, lots of spam email that have that kind of thing. So we want children to be able to critically think about if it feels like it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So we really want them to be able to think about that and to be able to not give that information. One thing we do want them to do is to look at the About Us section on a website. So that is going to give you lots of great detail, lots of great information about that particular website, whether it's credible, whether it's not. You also want to make sure that when you're looking for information that it is a credible source, and that a lot of times that you can find it in multiple spots. That's going to be very, very a huge detectable thing. So I talked a little bit about Common Sense Media. So I do want to really quickly, we'll show you the website real fast. Because there's several things I wanted to talk about, but I'll get to some of it. I'll make sure that you get the rest of it as well. But as I mentioned, this is the Common Sense Media website. Up here in the top corner, you're going to notice that it changes a little bit whether you are a parent, whether you are an educator, or whether you are an advocate. So again, it's got lots and lots of great resources. For educators, there's a ton of resources. We're talking about lesson plans, professional development, tech reviews. And so these give this particular site gives honest and great feedback when it comes to thinking about media usage, whether that be, like I said, there's lots of great lesson plans that are here for K through 12. So that's kind of what I was talking about. There's not a lot when we're thinking about preschoolers, but some of this you could still use. So for example, I'm going to show you this. This is part of, there's a lesson plan that talks about a traffic light, the internet traffic light. And so this is a cute little song that will get stuck in your head. So I'm sorry, you're welcome. But this is a cute little song that really will get stuck in your head when it talks about the internet and internet usage. Hang on a second.
We go online to find new things to do and see. Internet traffic light shows where we need to be. Green means go to sites we trust. Yellow means slow. Being safe is a must. Red means stop. Ask if it's okay. Trust your gut to go the right way. Green means go to sites we trust. Yellow means slow. Being safe is a must. Red means stop. Ask if it's okay. Trust your gut to go the right way.
So, okay, it was a poem. I forgot. I'm sorry. I said song instead of poem. I messed it up, but that still gets stuck in your head. The thing about thinking about when you're using this with children, one is, first of all, you're going to be having that discussion. What does it mean to trust your gut? That may not be a term or a saying that all children are familiar with. So we want to make sure that they clearly understand, what does that mean to trust your gut? Trust your instinct. We understand what that means, but we just want to make sure that they do as well. And then after the video, you're going to be having conversation and talking about how we see traffic lights around us when we're on the road all the time. And so it's still using that same, that's what I really like about this, is how it takes that same thought of stop, slow down, or go into the same thought process when we're talking about using media and technology. So then, you can also then begin and move into class discussions. This is the next couple of slides are actually out of a presentation that go along with this particular lesson plan. So then you can have conversations about, what does that mean when an app or a website is just right for you? And so how do you know what are some characteristics of something that you know is just right for you? So maybe you're having conversations about that it was something that your class teacher told you that you could be on, or whatever the case may be. But then you can be having those further discussions. Same thing for yellow. So what does that mean? That means we're going to be careful. That means that that it might be something that's too hard for them to read, that it starts asking personal information that they're not quite sure they should be giving, or it has a form that they're supposed to fill out. So there's something kind of in their gut that's like, I don't know, I'm not sure that this is quite where I need to be. Then of course a red site. So red is same thing, all of the stuff with yellow, but we know clearly that this is something that's not right for us. The other thing that I really want to kind of reiterate when we talk about this with children, especially thinking about red sites, is that a lot of times it can happen by accident, right? So we're wanting children to understand that it doesn't necessarily, like, they're not trying to be bad, or they're not trying to be on a website that's inappropriate for them. It just happens to be that that's what they clicked on. I know I've done searches for maybe an image on Google, put in something totally vanilla, for lack of a better term, totally bland, didn't think it was going to be a problem. And then in that image search, it shows up some images that I'm like, why in the world? And that has to do with how it's tagged on the back end. So somebody somewhere has decided to make sure that that gets tagged a certain way, so that if I'm looking up for vanilla, that it pops up something totally inappropriate. So it can be totally by accident. And we want to make sure that children understand that they're not maliciously always trying to get, or, they're typically not trying to get to something that they're not supposed to be on. All right, so this again is that little poem that you just heard. So you can go over that, talk about this poem, and talk about what that looks like and what does that mean. And this is that they actually have a printout that you can send home that, again, just has that conversation with parents about what that means. Then this one's a game. I would do this. I think I want to do the other one though. But for example, this is something that you can do, is that you would have all of the students stand up. They could stand up in a line, or whatever your procedures happen to be, and then you're going to read off, it's in the lesson plan, but you're going to read off something like, you went to the Games-O-Rama website by accident, and a stranger has sent you a message asking for your name and your age. So then they have to decide, is that a green website? That's something that's okay to do. So I move 2 steps forward. Or I don't know, I think I may need to slow down. I might need to ask for help. That's a yellow website. So I'm going to take 1 step forward. Or nope, that's not okay. I should not be giving my name and age out to these random people on the internet. So that's a red website and I need to stay where I'm at. So there's several of these same type of phrases, like for example, a site for your favorite TV show has lots of fun things to do for kids your age. Is that a green website or whatever? So again, they decide about that. So then that's going to allow you to have conversations, definitely not making sure that they feel bad about the way that they answered it, but just again, asking them those critical thinking questions. So if they answered that it's a yellow website, then what made you think that? Why would you believe that it's a yellow website? Tell me more about that, or whatever, something along that lines. But again, it's to continue to foster those critical thinking skills when we're talking about using media and technology. One resource that I really want to make sure that you understand or that is out there is Molly of Denali. I've talked about Molly of Denali in a couple of our other trainings, but I really wanted to make sure to mention her. So Molly of Denali is one of the newer PBS Kids shows that are out. It is based in Alaska. So Molly is an Alaskan native. It's the very first kids television show that is about Indigenous cultures or an Indigenous native. So there's lots of great resources that also encompass that. The other thing that I want you to know about Molly of Denali is that her kind of overarching educational concept or educational goal is informational text. So this is, of course, information, or this is text whose primary purpose is to teach us something, whether that be a procedure or a how-to. So, or maybe it's a biographical text. So we want to learn and know more about a person. I had to do for a class of mine, actually just the other night, I read a great picture book biography about Louis Braille. It's called 6 Dots. If you're interested, I highly encourage. It's a really awesome book. But anyway, so there's biographical. I learned information about Louis Braille and how he came up with the Braille system. It's a functional text. So whether that's, again, like you can see on that graphic there, this graphic, I do want to kind of reiterate, is that it's not meant to be memorized. This, again, is just meant to be a tool for educators to kind of help know what informational text is, and to share with parents just to kind of know what informational text is, that we're surrounded by informational text a lot. But functional, so we're looking at making sure that we look at the weather to know what types of clothes, or what do I need to take my umbrella today or not take my umbrella, nonfiction narratives, and then informative explanatory. So making sure that we understand or know information about the world around us. So that's a big part of what Molly of Denali does. So one thing that I am going to do real quick is I am going to give you just a kind of a snippet or an example of how you could use Molly of Denali to talk about media literacy and how we can educate ourselves about thinking critically about it. So in this particular episode, this is one called Splash of Mink. The episode is available in PBS Learning Media. It's going to be in that link for that folder. But in this episode, so Molly and her friend Trini and then her dog Suki are all gone for a walk. Well, Suki finds a mink. So first of all, that might be when we're thinking about, we talked about earlier, what is some information that I might need to make sure that children understand before I show a clip. Minks aren't something you typically find here in Kentucky, right? We understand what a skunk is. That's something that we see or that we know of or that we've smelled around. So there we need to make sure that we correlate those two together. Did you know that when a mink is scared or frightened or something like that, that it's going to spray? And it has a spray that's kind of similar to a skunk. And so can you imagine? So Suki, the dog, has found a skunk. What do you think happens? Right, he gets sprayed, right? So, well, not only does Suki get sprayed, but Trini and Molly get sprayed. So there's a whole issue there too. So let me show you this clip from Molly of Denali, where you can watch about that. Hold on.
I have an idea. We could go online and look up a way to get rid of the smell.
Good idea, but would you mind doing it, like, way over there?
Searching how to clean off mink spray. Fast! Fast! Hey, this looks good. Greatest cleaning expert of all time. He says #1 solution for mink smell. Tomato juice. Ooh! Where can we get some? Maurice probably has some at the co-op. Come on!
So for example, some questions, you could pause it right here and ask some questions like, why do you think Molly clicked on that link instead of the others? So for some of you, let me know, why do you think Molly, when she was scrolling through, why do you think she stopped on that particular link versus any of the others? Well, I personally think it's because it said that he was the greatest cleaner of all times. So I think that that's maybe why. Then we can ask them to think, if you were, if you saw this website, would you have clicked on it? Yes, or I mean, why or why not? Why would you have not done that? And then also to critically think about, so this would maybe come after that discussion, right? Thank you. Maybe come after that discussion of the internet traffic light. So when you think about that site, was that site a green site, a yellow site, or a red site? And then again, why do you think that? All right, so we're gonna watch just a little bit more and see what happens.
Hi, Maurice. We came to...
Wow, wait, please do not bring that foul smell inside.
But we need...
Tomato juice for your mink stink. Hold on.
Wow, he's good.
You can pay me when you smell better.
Basit. Thanks, Maurice.
You're welcome.
Okay, here goes. Do I still smell? Trini, we don't drink the tomato juice. We wash with it. Oh! This is gonna get sloppy. I feel like spaghetti. It's starting! Come on! Grandpa!
Whoa! I recognize that smell. You got sprayed by a mink, and you tried to wash it off with tomato juice. And, yep, didn't work.
It didn't?
Nope.
Oh no! But Grandpa, we went online to the greatest cleaning expert of all time, and he says tomato juice is the #1 solution.
Let's see. Greatest cleaning expert of all time? Sheesh. He says you can get rid of permanent marker by whistling really loud. Ridiculous.
So he's not an expert?
You can't believe everything you read, Molly. Not everyone who says they're an expert really is. It's best to get information from a source you trust.
Well, I trust you.
And I trust Tooey's dad. When Kenji's dogs get minky, he soaks them in a tub of baking soda, dish soap, and hydrogen peroxide.
Baking soda, dish soap, hydrogen peroxide.
Always works. Get some at the co-op and put it on my account.
Basit, Grandpa. Wait, how come the smell doesn't bother you?
I'm used to bad smells. Volcanoes smell even worse than minks. I'll see you both later, after your bath.
Bye, Grandpa. Bye.
So then we can stop it right there and start having the conversation. So did the tomato juice work? Well, clearly it did not work at all. Like didn't work at all. So then what advice did Grandpa give to Molly and Trini when it comes to looking for information? What was some of the advice that he gave them? We talked about making sure one thing, did you notice that he was scrolling through the website and then when he came across that it talked about that they could write looking for a good source, thanks Cindy, is that he says that you can remove permanent marker by whistling. Now, while I wish that was true, having had two young children, while I wish that was completely true to be able to happen, we know that that's not true. That's not how permanent marker comes off. So again, being critical and looking around on the site to make sure that, and usually like we talked about earlier, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. So if somebody's touting themselves as the greatest cleaner of all time, they may not really be the greatest cleaner of all time. And they may not be an expert. So again, we need to find that trusted source, right, Kathy? Thanks. And that trusted, reliable source. So in this case, it was Grandpa. So we can understand that reliable sources can come from anywhere around us. It doesn't have to come from a website or a textbook. It can also come from others, more experienced others. So in this case, Grandpa, he even said, I don't know the information, but I know that when so-and-so's dog gets minky, this is what they do, and it does get rid of the smell. So that's who I trust. And so again, understanding that we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to find that information. I think about, for example, so my 13-year-old daughter we just recently allowed her to have an Instagram account. And so there's a dog that lives here in Lexington that we follow. He's a super cute dog. His name is Leroy. But anyway, she saw this post that Leroy's mom had made that said that Leroy had went to the Met Gala. And so I was like, what? Emily, what are you talking about? And she said, well, yeah, there was a picture. There was a picture on Leroy's site or on Leroy's page that he was at the Met Gala. And I was like, are you sure, Emily? And so I pulled up his page. I was looking at that picture. I clicked on the picture and saw there was like a ton of hashtags that were underneath the picture. The very first hashtag said hashtag photoshopped. And so I told Emily, I said, honey, take a look at the first hashtag. And she goes, dang it. So again, that's just wasn't a great opportunity for me to help her understand that you can't take everything at face value. It doesn't matter if it is a super cute and very well done photoshopped photo. It didn't happen. He was not there. So again, we need to make sure that just as when we're teaching children to read and we're teaching them to use context clues around words to understand the meaning what the purpose and meaning behind that word is, we want them to do the same thing when it comes to media literacy. So that's one thing I was telling her is that she needs to make sure to check the hashtags, check the information underneath that, just to make sure that it's correct. So anyway, another thing, Kathy, if you will please go ahead and put in the 2 links for these 2 websites. I want to show you these 2 websites. Now, while again, you couldn't use these with very young children, but you could with probably first, second, maybe even third graders, and maybe even, I know that there's even some other ones that are done that are above that. But I want you to take a couple of minutes. I want you to pick one of the websites, or you can go to both if you would like to, but I want you to pick one of the websites and just take a look around at what you see on this website. So I'll give you, like I said, a couple of minutes to do that. So we've had somebody that has used the Tree Octopus website. That's really cool. I love, yeah. So the Tree Octopus happens to be, I think, one of my favorites, just because I thought it was hilarious. And if you really look at that one, that website is very well done, like very well done. And it makes it difficult. It makes it, I mean, there's like research and they put a lot of effort into that. And it was built to be used with students so they can explore it. Oh, somebody said that they need a cat island instead of a dog island. I thought that's cute too. So that's just one way or one example that, one thing that you can do with young children. So let me get back to, all right. So the next thing I want to talk about is, this actually came out last year. It's from WGBH. It's a collection of videos and things that they put together that's called Search It Up. And they're super cute. A lot of them are about 2 minutes, give or take a little bit. Now, all of these, I linked you to the GBH website. GBH is Boston's PBS station. I linked you to their website because it's got all of these on here and great information as well. However, you can also find all of these videos on YouTube. But you're going to see that it's got lots of information or lots of things when we're thinking about media literacy that we can use with young children. So understanding what's on the internet, when we take photos, asking an expert, how do I know that I should buy something from this website, and that kind of information. So there's lots of great, like I said, most of them are about 3 minutes long, give or take a little bit. No, Kathy, I wish they were. They are not in PBS Learning Media. I have not been able to find them in there. But like I said, you can find them on YouTube. I do know that. So I'm going to show you this one. This is the one I'm talking about the internet. And I really liked this one when we used it with, like I said, those 2nd and 3rd graders. It's put on a level to help them understand how to discern truthful information or not.
How do you find something?
Search it up. Search it up. Search it up.
Search it up.
The internet.
Smartphones.
GPS. Hello. Technology. The internet.
Smartphones.
GPS. Hello.
We're taking selfies.
Balloons are great.
Your toaster.
Search it up. Searching it up.
People use computers for searching because they want to know more stuff. Yeah, Google takes you to other websites. Like, let's say I wanted to know how to paint walls. So I'd look it up, and there'd be different links. Let's say I'm making something up. Lightworks Network. And with that link, you could, I'm making it up, they would have a description of how to paint. First, you get the paint bin, and then you grab the paintbrush, and then you get some paint from the paint bin, and you stripe down the wall. That's like a how-to video, yeah.
And I think you should definitely check with a parent before searching the internet.
The internet can be wrong part of the time, but right most of the time.
There could be things that are not correct.
If I saw something that said worms can glow in the dark, I might think that that might be true because there are I think they're called fireflies where they have lights on the end, which is sort of similar to a glowing worm.
You have to trust your instincts. Some kids think they know what's real and what's fake. But do they really? We're gonna do the fake and real quiz show.
Are these animals real or fake? Flying squirrel.
Real.
Pink fairy armadillo.
Fake.
Pink fairy armadillo. Real. Chicken turtle.
Fake.
Fried egg jellyfish.
Fake. Fried egg jellyfish.
What was it?
Fried egg jellyfish.
Fried egg jellyfish. Real.
Screaming hairy armadillo.
Real. Screaming hairy armadillo.
Fake.
Long wattled umbrella bird. Fake. Long wattled umbrella bird.
Real.
Pink Amazon river dolphin.
Real.
Pink Amazon river dolphin. Fake.
They were all real. How can I know what I see on the internet is real or fake?
I think if you find the same information in lots of places, it might be true.
Maybe you should ask a parent.
You can also go to the library.
So I really like that. Like one idea that I even had about using that video. So you could have the children, before they get to this part about whether those animals are real or fake, you could ask them the questions about these particular animals. Because I know when I listened to some of those, I thought, surely to goodness, those aren't all real, right? However, let me show you. This is the fried egg jellyfish. Why does it called that? Look, it looks like a fried egg. I thought that's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I learned about another animal. Now, this isn't part of this, but there is one that's called, it is called the mirror spider. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is the coolest thing. I learned about this actually. I'm going to tell you on media. I learned about it from a lady on TikTok. She writes for Sesame Street. She was telling, in her post, was telling about a story that she was working on for it's one with Abby Cadabby. But anyway, and that they really wanted children to learn not to be scared of spiders. And so they introduced them to the mirror spider. She was like, its little butt looks like a disco ball. I was like, what? I thought, that can't be true either. Sure enough, guess what? There is a mirror spider. But again, I wouldn't have thought that would be true. So we really need to help children understand and think critically about those. But some of the names for those characters that they gave on there, I thought the jellyfish or the fried egg jellyfish, there's no way that is real.
How do you find some?
That's just crazy. So another collection, actually, this is in PBS Learning Media that I wanted to let you know about, is this one's called Ruff Ruff Min. He is a humble media genius. So in this one, now this one is a few years old. So it's not that the information is incorrect, because that's not it at all. There's a couple of references that maybe are in some of the videos that might be a little bit dated, but it's still a great resource to use, because you can definitely do like I've done in some of the others. You can pare it down and use just specific little clips or something like that in whatever you're doing. So like I said, you will be able to, I am giving you a direct link to this collection in a resource folder that you'll get here in just a few minutes. But anyway, so there's lots of information again that you can use on here. He talks about how to do a search on the internet. In this particular video, he really talks about using specific keywords so that we know that we're going to hopefully get the result that we're looking for when we're doing an internet search. He has a whole couple of videos on privacy, on texting, technology, and there's lots of great characters. Ruff Ruff Min has been around for a little while. He started out at Fetch with Ruff Ruff Min when my oldest daughter was a young girl, was when she was a little kid. I love Ruff Ruff Min, honestly, I do. And then he's got his friend Blossom, there is the cat. And then there's a little mouse friend, that's Chet. And so they all three are learning lots of great stuff all the time. But this particular collection is specific to media usage. So I wanted to make sure to point that out to you. Kathy, if you want to, can you go ahead and put in the link to the resource folder? Put that in the box or in the chat box for me, please. Are there any questions? Do any of you all have any questions about anything that we've talked about or resources or anything like that?